Okay, we are on and live.
Recording in progress. Got it. How's
Yeah.
your day, buddy?
It's been 12 hours a day lately, and it
I
looks like
know.
another 12-hour day today. So,
Yeah. I
yeah,
jumped
so
up first thing this morning and started working on all the stuff for the Metaverse launch. So I've
I
been, I guess you've probably been in there and seen, I've done a bunch of writing and a bunch of working on that.
yeah, I don't know. I've been busy putting the automations together, and so I didn't know if my system would allow 6 automations, but I did, and we've
Cool.
got 6 automations. So yeah, I'll fill them out as soon as you tell me you got them done. So
Yeah. Good deal. Yeah. I don't know, man. There's just so much information that I want to get across. There's so many things that I want to tell people about, and then trying to keep it down to a succinct, a small amount of information at a time where it's just like, okay, I only need 25, 30 seconds of your time. Just read this, just one step at a time is what I was thinking. So I think I've got everybody all the way up now. The last one that I just wrote took everybody up to the actual drop date. And how you have to have your, you have to have your wallet set up and that kind of thing, and telling folks that it's easy. I wrote one that talked about how we did our first Ask Me Anything. So I'm
cool.
trying to keep everybody posted.
I got good feedback on that too, just to let you know. So that it
Good.
looked like everybody had fun and enjoyed themselves, and even the big boss from Creatokia showed up and stayed an extra half hour because he was enjoying himself. So
Yeah. I thought it went really well. I'm looking forward to doing a bunch more of those. I think that's something that we could probably, just like with you do the podcast every week. I don't think it would be a terrible idea if we eventually moved the podcast into an environment like that where we're sharing information between the two of us, but we've got a live audience there and people that can interact. I think that'd be really fun.
we can record that metaverse page just as easily as anything. So I was
Yeah.
thinking about the same thing. Why not? Right.
Yep. I think so, man. I'm looking forward to it. And it was fun. It was hilarious watching everybody run around, getting used to jumping and dancing. And
Yeah, but when we started talking, they all sat down. That was
yeah.
great. So
Yeah.
yeah. So
I think so. And I figured out the technical glitch on the guy who couldn't hear anything. I figured out what was going on there, so I can fix that next time.
cool. And I figured out that I can't have videos playing because anytime somebody enters the room, that drumming noise they were hearing was that
Yeah.
video. And so it seems like the video plays automatically for anybody that enters the room. So they were hearing it, they were hearing the drums.
We're learning. Yeah, we're everybody. I got feedback from people afterward too, like, oh, what was that about? But
Yeah,
I don't know. I
I
thought it
didn't
was
know.
cool. Yeah, I thought it was cool. I walked into the room and there's this like really exciting music playing and everything. I'm like, oh my God, I have arrived.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was problematic to have everybody hearing the different music going on and everything. So everything's a learning process, man.
You
This is
know,
just
and ultimately we as we live and learn, as long as we're having fun along the way and everybody else seems to be enjoying themselves, none of it's that big a deal.
yeah.
So
Well, that was what was so funny about Karsten yesterday. For anybody who's watching who doesn't know, we set up and what's called an AMA, or an Ask Me Anything, which is a live session where you get in with an author or a creator and you just get to chat with them, right? But we did it in the metaverse, and so everybody got to create an avatar that looked like them. So your screen takes a picture of your face, and then then it creates a character for you, and then you get to dress it and all this kind of stuff. It's kind of like playing Sims or something. Anyway, it was fun watching people around. But the head guy from the publishing company was there, and he said, John, he said something yesterday that really I thought was cool when he said, I'm having so much fun at work, I can't tell when I'm working and when I'm playing. And I was like, that is my life goal right there. You just summed it up in one sentence. I'm having so much fun, I can't tell if I'm working or playing. And I was like, that's awesome. That's what we're looking for.
it should be illegal. We're just enjoying ourselves way too much. So, and
Don't tell.
and half of it is getting the series out to everybody and doing things like this podcast, which are so much fun. The other half of it is simply taking a trip into some place that's brand new, right? The undiscovered country. And and so we really are blessed to have that in our path right as we're moving in this direction. It shows up. It's serendipity. It's God's will, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
It's
Well,
it's working for us.
I was today, one of the things I was doing in the background is, I've been in that seminar that I took last week, and I enjoyed the seminar so much that I signed up for like a bonus day today. And so as soon as we get off the podcast, I'm going to jump right back into the room. Excuse me. But they keep talking about how, you look at Microsoft and Google, and like everybody's laying all these people off because this recession is hitting us, right? So you've got, pretty substantial inflation. I don't know if you've done your budget lately, but mine, I was like, oh my God, I'm spending a lot more money than I was this time last year, And I think I was writing about this today. People are worried about this like weird dystopian future where people won't live real lives. They'll just, plug into the matrix, so to speak, and be in the metaverse. And I guess that there's a chance of somebody not using it right, but just seeing everybody interact yesterday where they got to just take a little break, go have fun, talk about a fantasy world, run around, jump around, dance, interact with an avatar of somebody that's like, my avatar that's all dressed in the leather and everything. Like I can't run around in real life like that, but it sure is fun for a few minutes,
Yeah.
And I think it's just a fun time. Like if we are facing an ugly recession and people are out of work and everything, let's do something creative. Let's get people involved in something that makes them happy and brings some joy. And the message of the Celestial Wars, of courage and faith and stepping outside of what you thought you were capable of. Like what a better time to be, putting that out there. So I think it is divine timing. I really do.
Yeah. So however it has happened, it is a hoot. And I continue to enjoy the heck out of myself. I'm having too much fun.
Yeah.
Well, what do you got there?
I am doing coffee. I live in an old building, and the heating and air conditioning in my old building is not great. And yes, last night I ran myself out of firewood. So it's a little chilly in my
hence the
condo right
bear
now.
wrap. I thought you were just getting ready to get costumed up for another photo shoot or something. So
no, this is my actual warm blanket. Yeah.
It looks warm.
Dude, if you could see outside right now, it looks like a winter wonderland, but it's not snow, it's ice. Yeah. It's just piles and piles of ice, and everything is shut down here. So all the schools, all the businesses, everybody's stuck at home. We're all texting each other. What are you doing? And everybody's bored out of their mind. And I'm like, I'm creating a universe.
Yeah. I'm so busy, I can hardly think about it. It's just happening, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Yesem, who's been helping direct everything we're doing over at Creatokia, asked for a making of the series. And so somewhere in this podcast, I would like to fulfill her expectation that she's going to get that, because we're right on top of needing it. And so if you don't mind spending a few minutes talking about how we started doing all of this. I know last time we talked about some of how you got involved, right?
Yeah, last time you asked me all kinds of questions. This time I get to ask you questions. You should have told me yesterday so I could prepare some questions. But
we just go off the top of our heads, darn it. So,
all right, fine, whatever. What on earth, where were you sitting? Let me ask you this. Where were you sitting when you went, I'm going to write about a supernatural detective? What on earth got a hold of you?
It didn't happen like that. Not at all. So I came up with the name Harmon Wade 10 years ago. 10 years before I even thought about getting started. I just liked the name, and I thought if I ever do a detective series, this is going to be my detective's name, because Harm and Wade and Harmon as sort of, just harmony, and there was just all sorts of nuances to that name. And detectives should always have a cool name, right? Sherlock Holmes and Hieronymus Bosch, and all of them have their unique
Perry
names.
Mason.
Yeah. And so I wanted something a little bit unusual, and I thought that works, right? That has a sense of menace to it, and I like that name. And so I got that 10 years ago and stuck it in my back pocket just in case I ever got there. And then I was at Dell one day and was, browsing the internet, because that's what you do when you have a moment, of which there are very few. But when you have a moment, you browse, and I came across an old Austin American Statesman newspaper article. They were just I don't know how I came across it, but they were talking about Jack the Ripper coming to Austin back in the 1800s. And supposedly he showed up here right after he did all the murders in England. That's why he disappeared from England, as he came to Austin, Texas.
What?
It was a big 6-part.
Oh my gosh, are we locked up?
Austin American
I hope my internet hasn't gone down.
I can see you still.
Oh man, I hope this ice storm didn't knock out my internet. If you can still hear me.
You are, I hear you, but you're frozen. You're colder than cold. Oh, there you go.
There we go. Okay, we're back. Yeah, I think I was having some streaming problems before too when I was in my seminar, and I think it's just the ice storm. So
It
hopefully
says
everything's
here
okay.
your internet connection is unstable. If I have to cut pieces of it out, I will, but that would be sad.
Yeah,
So
I know.
yeah,
So
so
okay, so Jack the Ripper allegedly showed up in Austin.
big series of newspaper articles in the 1800s Austin American Statesman, right?
Wow.
And the sheriff's name that I used in the book was actually the sheriff that was hunting him back then, and it was I think it came to nothing. I think it was just sensationalism, but they put the idea in my head. What if Jack the Ripper was, longer lived? And what
Yeah.
if he did come to Austin? Because I love Austin, and if I was going to write
Mhm.
about someplace, it would be Austin. And
Yeah.
so that went into my head at Dell, and it was another year later, I think, before I actually got a chance to, I got through Dell, I got through Fusion Storm, I came to my next part of my life, and was going to be an enterprise consultant, because that's what I did at Dell. And while I'm preparing for that, I'm thinking about this series and going, that this could be really cool. This could be really fun. And so I started writing the series, and I forgot about everything else. Right, the series just took over my life, and
Yeah.
I think it was about chapter 3 or 4 when Smoke came into his world. Right, because I had that opening scene that was really grab you and get your attention. And with the murder and Jenny Summers, and all
Mhm.
that was good. I got Molly was great in there, but then Smoke comes along, right?
Yeah.
And Jack the Ripper turns out to be this conniving little spirit that's very dangerous and very subtle about the things that he's doing. Not gonna, I'm not gonna step out here and just beat you up. And I
Yeah.
like that as a direction, because I didn't just want to write a beat you up kind of novel, right? Fight
Yeah.
here, fight there, fight everywhere, boom, you're done.
Yeah.
That just didn't appeal to me. And so as it started moving in that direction of being a little more mind oriented and a little more intense in that direction, and having that sort of suspense and feel to it, I thought I'd really latched onto something good. And then the novel just flowed from there.
Yeah. It's always funny to me when I'm talking to you as you're writing, you are as surprised by, I feel like it seems like you are as surprised where the story goes as anybody who might be reading it. And I was reading, I just finished a great book by Stephen King called On Writing. And he has a writing style just like yours, where he doesn't sit down and outline out where everything's going to go. He just thinks of the characters and the situation, and then he starts telling their story. And he said that he's always shocked. He's like, that I didn't see that coming. And that's what he uses to gauge if it's going to be a good novel for the reader, is if the writer didn't see it coming, what are the chances that the reader's going to see it coming? And I think that that's such a cool way to create, this book that I'm writing right now. It has to follow this timeline. It's historical fiction, so the story has to go a
You're
certain way, and
locked
then
in, yeah.
I'm locked in. Yeah, and I'm jealous almost of just like being able to start a story. Next time I do something, I'm gonna do it that way, the way that you do it, and the way Stephen King does it, and just try and start telling a story and see where the hell it goes. But that's it. When I heard him say that, because it's an audiobook, he's narrating it. When I heard him say that, I was like, that sounds just like John Campbell.
No, I mean, there's seat of the pants writers, seat of the pants golfers. There's all sorts of seat of the pants people out there. It is just a style. And
Yeah.
for me, I mean, it was the same way at Dell. Everything was, you get to a meeting, and 5 minutes before the meeting, you prepare for the meeting, because you've been so busy the entire time leading up to the meeting, you didn't have a chance. And so I was 22 years at Dell, got me really used to just firing it off the cuff, and if it looked right and felt right, then you went with it, right?
Cool.
And you had to trust your instincts, you had to trust your intelligence and your knowledge. And
Yeah.
so I when I did that on the first book, I was just constructing the book, right? I didn't really know where I wanted to go. I just kind of was getting into it and enjoying myself. And then I started hitting, stopping points, and I would sleep on it. And so I go to sleep, and I'd wake up in the morning, I go, that's what needs to happen next, right?
Wow.
And so somewhere in there in my dreams, I was still thinking about the books, and I'd wake up and I'd know what needed to happen next. And it was just it was always just fine, just perfect. The book turned out good. Everybody seems to like it. But then by book 2, I got so used to doing it that way that I counted on it, right? So book 1, it just developed like that. By book 2, anytime I'd hit a stopping point, I go, I'm just going to sleep on it, and I just stop, right?
Yeah.
And I never had writer's block. Never really was sitting here looking at the keyboard thinking, oh, where do I come up with the next? I'd always just go to wherever I go to. It might be 500 words that day. It might be 5,000 words, right? Well, or at least a couple of thousand. But because I'm not that fast. And whatever that stopping point hit, I'd just stop. I'd do whatever I was going to do the rest of my day. I'd go to sleep that night, and inevitably the next morning I'd wake up, and that next piece, the next perfect piece, would be there, right?
Wow.
Yeah, not the logical piece, the next perfect, the next most unexpected, most intriguing, most interesting direction for the book to go would just be there in my head, and I'd start writing it.
Wow, magic. It's creative magic.
Well, I firmly believe in the subconscious abilities of the brain, right? I was thinking about this in sports. When you get really into the moment in sports, you're no longer really thinking about it at all. You're just in the flow, and it's almost more like a ballet of motion. There's in racquetball or foosball, which I played, or any of those things really intense. As you're going back and forth with the person that you're fighting against, you're not beating on them per se. You're sort of dancing in the moment with them, and then you find that perfect shot or that perfect response that's just a touch better than where they were. In the meantime, you were dancing, you were just enjoying the hell out of it, and you were just totally into the moment, and then it gets perfect from there. So I believe cool. Subconscious mind has a lot of power and can do a lot of interesting things if you just free it.
Yeah. So speaking of things that are in your subconscious, I know, as far as I know, there's only one character in the whole series that's based on a person from your life. But I know that when I'm writing, I draw inspiration. Like when I wrote the brothers character in the Footprints musical, I have a friend of mine, and I was like, what would he say right now? That's how I get that inspiration from a character. Are there other characters in the series that are based on people? Like, is Smoke a person that you know? Not that you know a 7-foot tall Indian, but is that those mannerisms? Yeah, are these people that you've known over the years?
Yeah, it's a great question. So my 2 favorite women in the book, Molly O'Sullivan, is actually I don't think she knows it, but and I won't use her name, but she is from a young lady that when I was 16 or 17 years old, I absolutely fell in love with this woman because she was gorgeous. She was highly intelligent, and her way of thinking about things was always interesting. Like I'd start talking to her, we just go for hours, right? But she didn't have the return feelings. And it was the first person that I liked her so much that instead of trying to just be lovers with her, I turned it into a friend of hers, and we were just friends forever on, and still know her, right? And still, every time she posts something, I'm intrigued by the way she thinks about things. It's just very interesting. And so Molly has a good part of that in her. But beyond that, it was the other character was Baresis. And that was sort of a tribute to my ex, who I was deeply in love with. And I pulled some of those feelings back up to try to create a character that was a larger than life goddess of this entire planet, right? She was a planetary mother. And to give her the sort of life I wanted, I used my marriage with Lynn to really pull up emotions and feelings and create that sort of character.
I remember when I read that, I remember stopping and getting in touch with you and going, where did this come from? Like this, like all of it, like it jumped out at me that fast, where I was like, who is this person? Like she is just intoxicating, and I was overwhelmed by the feeling of reading about this character, and like she got in my head, and I was like, my God, she's got me all screwed up, and I'm just narrating a book, for crying out loud,
So I had one of those love affairs that are magical that you get maybe once in your life, and she was that magical person in my life, and we had we had an incredible time together for several years until being kids. Of course, we grew off in different directions. So
Yeah.
and
Wow.
so that's the way it goes. But the magic was there, and I feel super blessed to have had in my life. And of course, I had to draw from it to get to the strongest place that I could emotionally for this character that I felt very, very, strongly about.
Yeah.
Now, I will tell you that there is a character behind Harmon Waite to some extent.
Really?
There's a character behind Noble to some extent. I don't think I should use their names, but because they're actors, right? But they had I had, as I was putting these characters together, I used the image and my experience with these characters on screen to sort of help develop these characters in the directions that I want them to go. So it isn't just a takeoff on that actor, but that actor, I think it's the best way to say it is the way that you treated the character when I told you, and you know who the actor is. When I told you, you didn't imitate that actor, you channeled the actor, and you created your own voice, but there was that sense to it. And a very strong sense. And if anybody from this podcast figures out who that is, y'all be sure and send me a message, because I'll send you a signed copy of the book just to say thank you for taking the time to figure it out.
That's such a cool idea. We should find some little nuggets like that, dude, where we could run a couple of little contests, especially, right now we've got a broad market of everybody who can watch on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, right? But once we get into the point where we've got the community, the members only community, where you have to have the member token, the community token to be there, there's a lot more of that stuff we can share, because then it becomes like a private club. We could really incorporate some of those little Easter eggs and stuff as activities among the community. Once we get into that space, that'd be super fun.
Well, they're there. I got plenty of Easter eggs.
I know you do.
Yeah, you know more of them than not, right? So I'm sure some of that stuff is going through your head because we've shared enough over time. And that's kind of, I mean, if I want to talk about the making of, I'm going to go back to you again and say, I was sitting here doing all this myself, right? I think of it as sort of like you're in deep space by yourself, right? It feels very lonely and very, very by yourself doing anything that's writing, or because you don't really get much feedback. Even when you put the book out there, you don't get a lot of feedback, and every little piece of feedback is just a jewel, right? Like say whether it's positive or negative, I didn't care. It's feedback. And other than that, I'm doing all of this myself, and I don't really have any idea that it's good yet even, right? And so I'm just doing what I love to do. I love to write. I've been writing since I was in junior high school. And so I just went ahead with it. But then when you showed up and you got into the series, and you were the series, I called you the biggest fan for a long time. And I still think of you that way. And that helped me to come out and just enjoy the series more and have some solid footing and know that what I was doing had a value to it. And so thank you for being there. And I'm happy to be your partner going out into the metaverse. I think we're going to do good things out there. So.
I think so too. I loved, there's been a couple of times, origin story stuff. There's been a couple of times when I've been super honored. And one is the newest character that I don't know if you're ready to drop any of that stuff yet, but
I know that you are we talking about?
Yeah, because he's just made sort of a brief entree into the series, and I feel like that he's probably going to have a lot of his stuff. And you mentioned this during the Ask Me Anything, that you see a whole series of stories just based on that character. And that
he's such a strong character, right? I mean, so I based him on you, and it was with your permission, so I can talk about it. So he's the angel of justice. He's also a singer in small Texas. He stays under the radar, and he just goes around and just sings in different places around Texas, and just loves music, right? It's just a love of music. And he looks somewhat like you and acts somewhat like you, because darn it, he was based on you. And so and I loved it. It was perfect. I mean, you were the perfect character model for the angel of justice. I don't know what that means to you, but for me it worked really well. And I will tell you what I like best about the character, what makes me think of him as, like you do an entire series around this character, is the fact that he is the angel of justice. He's an archangel, which means a lot of power. And he's got the ability to go back in time. So when he sees, like when he sees the girl, that show, I won't tell you who all she's with and everything, but when he sees the girl that's really messed up and she's in a very messed up situation, he doesn't try to fix that. He goes back, he goes into her mind and finds out what started down this really bad path that she's on, and fix it way back there. So back when her stepfather is getting ready to rape this little girl.
Don't give it all away. Don't give it all away. People got to read it. Yeah.
He goes back.
It's so good though, man. He
fixes that. Yeah, justice. I mean, the way that he fixes it is the angel of justice as well. He doesn't fix it by beating on anybody or doing it. He fixes it with justice. He creates justice for the character.
Oh, that was such a clever. I was like, that was another time when I just stopped reading and I went, I can't believe you just did that. Like, it was just like, that's, if you had an angel whose job was to exact justice, but they were good, but in their nature, because the funny thing about the angels in the world is that in the Celestial Wars series is that you can't tell whether they're good or bad because they're beyond the idea of good and bad. They don't exist on the same plane that we do, and so you have this guy who, he's not out to hurt anybody. He's just out to fix problems with justice. And I was like, oh, that was clever. Oh, what a great way to fix that, so I'm curious to see what happens with more of his. And then the other thing was when I had my brain surgery, I had, for readers and listeners who don't know, I have a brain aneurysm that is, as of yet, inoperable. And so I had this procedure where they went to go inside and scan it. And when they did that, I was not able to take any anesthesia. And so I had to be completely awake during all of this. And I had to explain to them what was going on and talk to them about the procedure. And there was a part when they tapped into the deepest part of my brain, in the occipital lobe, but the old, reptile brain kind of stuff. And all of a sudden I had an out-of-body experience and I was trapped in the middle of space. And I had never felt so alone in my entire life. Like, I really felt like I had just been transported to the void of space. And I ended up shouting out, "Is anybody out there?" And of course I was in the hospital. I was in the operating room when it happened, and everybody was sitting there and I could hear their voices from far, far away saying, "We're right here. We're with you. You'll get through this." And it was just the most horridly lonely feeling I've ever experienced. And I remember as soon as I came back from the procedure and told you about that, you're like, "Well, I'm writing that in the book."
Yeah. Well, some things just demand to be written, right? So that was that storm we had here where the thunder rolled for 30 minutes, right? The thunder just didn't stop for 30 minutes. Well, that got incorporated into Arian's short story because it was just such a strong experience. So, yeah, I mean, writers may write fiction, and what is it we put at the beginning of each book? This product in no way represents any sort of reality that you're familiar with, right? This is its own thing. Well, the truth is that all writers write with if they write, I guess, emotionally, right? Which is what I always think emotional writing is the best because you get into it. They are pulling from their own experiences and their own lives. And either they have a hell of a big amount of empathy in their hearts, because you really, for me, a lot of what I've written touches on my own life and my experiences, and that's just the way it is, right? Right? Come on, the Catholic overtones in the book. I grew up Catholic, very Catholic. My mom was very Catholic. And at 13, I broke away from the Catholic faith because it just stopped making any sense to me. But I know it. And when people talk about Catholic overtones, they really, let me update that. So when they talk about Catholic overtones, they're talking about something that I used to be ingrained in me. And so I still remember it very well, and I can still get it across. Yeah. Right. So even without being religious myself today, I can get those ideas across. And I used them in the first place because I thought of religion as, you talk about powerful, there's nothing more powerful than religion, right? Yeah. And so I wanted to use that as the basis for things. And I just finished watching Warrior Nun and watching what they did with that.
I'm not familiar.
And so I should say it wasn't just Warrior Nun, but there were different stories out there that had that religious basis, right? Whether it was Catholic or Buddhism, right? They had a religious basis, and they used that to create a more powerful story because the characters are all, devils and angels, and they're all very familiar characters, right?
Is that a movie or an anime or what is that?
The Warrior Nun is actually a Netflix show.
Oh, okay. Huh. I wasn't
It's in its
familiar with that
second
one.
season now, and I just am watching the second season and enjoying it and looking
Yeah.
at how they use religion as a basis, and they use it in a much darker sense than I do, but
Yeah.
they use religion as a basis for what they're doing.
Yeah.
I know we're getting to the end. That was what happened.
Oh, shoot.
Pop-up
Yeah.
came up, but I've got one more thing I want to talk about in the making of, and that is the revision process, the revised books. And so if you get a chance and go to my website, you will see, which is thecreativenow.com, you will see a little excerpt of text that shows what the revisions looked like. And you will get a sense of why I spent the time and the effort doing it, I hope. But for either way, once it was time to bring these books outside of Amazon into the wide world, I really, really wanted them to be the best that I possibly could do. And when you said you'd re-narrate them, which seemed incredible to me that you were willing to do that, I was like, okay, this one's on. And so I sat down and revised the first book, which I'd already been through 10 times. And yet, because I learned so much writing 6 books, I really had a better sense of exactly how to craft a really, really good sentence, how to put a paragraph together that would sing, right?
Yeah.
And how to keep the flow of logic going and keep the dialogue tight and everything else that I really wanted this series to have. So I went back and paragraph by paragraph recrafted and restructured everything so that it really would sing better. And that's what those revised editions are. And that's what's out there now. Is in fact, I replaced anybody that bought the book on Amazon can just go download the revised version because I just replaced the original with the revised version.
Oh, I didn't realize you'd done that. I thought you were going to do a full release of. I didn't know that you just updated it. You just wanted everybody to have the best version.
Wanted everyone to have the revised version.
That's cool.
I haven't gotten around to doing it on Audible because I released the first 3 books on Audible as a trilogy, right? And so I've just left the focus on those for now. But they are the 3 revised versions that are sitting there in that little trilogy at a really good price, I think. Although Audible has some control over that, so I should be careful. Right? Well, I bought it myself for 1 credit. Darn it! So.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, that was. I don't know. I knew by the time we got. I think I was probably around book 4, maybe book 5, when I was like, man. I immediately started thinking, now that I know as much as I do about these characters, I wish I could go back and narrate their voices again, narrate, the way this is going to go. Because, like the character Noble, when I read for the first book, I'd never read books 2 through 6. And so I thought he was going to be a bit part. Like I didn't put as much thought into him until I realized, oh my God, I see what he does in the story now. And then he became a whole different person to me, And so
and even Molly's voice changed some. I mean, so your grasp of the characters was just so good when you went back and I listened to it. But not only has your craft improved because you've been doing narration for I caught you when you were first starting, and you've been doing narration for some years, and you're in high demand now because you do it well. But the inflections, the cadences, the drama, and the characters' voices were all just so much fun to listen to the second time around. And I didn't think you could do any better than you had done the first time, right?
I think one of the funniest things that ended up happening is you and I spend so much time talking that either I've started to talk like you or vice versa. Because now when I narrate, it's like reading your book falls so naturally into the natural rhythm and cadence of my voice that I just feel like I'm talking to you, or I feel like I'm talking to, a close friend as I'm sitting there reading, because it seems like you write with the same pauses that I use anyway. It seems like you write with the same cadence, and you and I have just sort of melded minds like a couple of Vulcans or something. I don't know. And so now it's really fun. And I think that developed throughout. I remember narrating the first couple of books and, having to go back and make changes and stuff and saying, oh, well, how did he mean for me to read that, to narrate it? And by the time we were, books 3 through 6, it was just, I hardly ever stumbled on anything because we just speak alike now. So it's cool to have a partner in creating something like that. I don't think anybody would have seen that coming when we very first started off. And now especially taking everything into Web3 and the metaverse. So
it's going to be so I got one more thing to tell you. I remember your first reaction to the revise when I told you I was going to revise the books, that your first reaction was, don't change too much, please. You were like, man, they're perfect as they are. Why do you want to revise them? And then I sent you the revisions side by side, and you were looking at it going, oh, okay, I see why you did what you did.
Right?
Yeah. Because I didn't take anything out in terms of the meat of the story. I just cleaned up all the rough edges around it, right?
Yeah. I think it was the right choice. And I'm glad that it again, with the divine timing of everything, I'm glad that everything is sort of laid out the way that it has over the last few years. I mean, if this development of Creatopia and moving into Web3 and the NFT space and the metaverse space had come along before, we wouldn't be as tight as we are now. Now we operate like a pretty tight team. And so it works really well for you. And I mean, like today, for instance, you're working on a whole bunch of stuff and I'm working on a whole bunch of stuff. And neither of us has to talk much to the other person. We just handle it, and I think we needed to be at that point before we were ready to jump into a whole new freaking universe, for crying out loud. I mean, literally,
Yeah, and we'll see where all that goes, but it's definitely, to me, the most exciting thing going on in 2023. This is not short term. This is the same as, writing the books or revising the books or anything else that I'm involved in. I'm involved because I want to be. I am as excited about the metaverse as I've ever been about any technology, because I see it taking over. I think Gartner said it really well, and they said 25% of the people in the world are going to be in the metaverse at least an hour a day in the next 3 years.
Yeah.
It's there you got, it's not me, it's the fact that Facebook changes its name to Meta, right?
That was, I can't remember where I got the statistic at this point, but they said they don't think it'll be fully functional for at least 5 and possibly up to 10 years. And that's probably true, but that means like full function, everybody using it all the time. There are new developments constantly, daily. There's more to be done. Just like when we got into the Ask Me Anything yesterday, and even Carson, who heads up the whole department, was like, oh my gosh, we want to build this, we want to build this. And it's just constantly being built. So every day you go in, something is new and something has changed. And it's just cool to see it. It's cool to see something like that develop.
I think it's going to be functional. Side of that, I think you and I will be coming up with some really good things to help them as we go down the road, because we definitely have the creative minds. In fact, the amount of rich content that we've given them so far, I think, is far beyond what they expected. So
there's so much crap we put together, so much stuff,
and it's all good, right? It's all stuff people would just eat up. And so as our fan base grows, I hope that we have, and I expect that we will have a plethora of things.
So speaking of which,
funnel of creative things that we can give out.
Yeah. Speaking of which, for anybody who, if this is their first podcast that they've seen, where are we collecting? Like, if somebody asks me what we're doing, which is the best site to send them to right now? Do we have it linked on the creative now, clear enough to say, here's my email, keep me in the loop?
You can go to the creative now and you can find it from there, and I'll double check and make sure that it's right. But you can also just go to Creatopia, so creatopia.com, and I'm right there on the homepage. They're talking about the launch.
Right.
So,
okay, cool. Yeah. So either one of those
3 authors that they started with. So I'm showing up, although they're getting busy. I was there first, so lucky me.
All right, man. It's been good to talk to you.
Yeah, have a good day and stay warm.
Absolutely. I'll try. I'll see you.
See ya.